This is Michael Clara. Welcome to my blog, Local School Boards Can Make a Difference, at michaelclara.com. The title of this blog entry is School District Superintendent Acerbic Letter to the Speaker of the Utah House of Representatives, and today is December 29th, 2013. This letter, just to give you some background, in late November I sent seven recommendations to the Legislative Task Force on Education. And this letter here that you're looking at is dated December 17th, and it was I call it the superintendent's letter because although it's signed by 4 different people, it's something that the superintendent wrote, and then he's kind of like the puppeteer, and then the other 3 signed on with him. I don't know what the logic is behind that, but what I want to just point out is that I use this word, this adjective, acerbic, because the letter is acid in temper, mood, or tone, expressing harsh criticism in a clever way, sharp or biting, as in character or expression, sour or bitter tasting. And so as I said, it's called the title of the superintendent's letter, although 4 people signed it. And they wrote the letter to the Speaker of the House of Representatives in response to my recommendations. I wrote a response recently to their letter. And in this picture here, I'm just standing at the Capitol here with my Senator Luz Robles and my House of Representative Angela Romero. The 3 of us are concerned about the educational outcomes for the kids in our community. I've not talked to them about this letter or this whole thing that's going on here with the recommendations, but my concern a bit is, and what happened was I did post these letters, by the way, in a previous blog, and so I got a lot of feedback from that, and people were just a bit concerned, those that follow the school board, with a couple of the issues in this letter, and I'm concerned as well. So that's why I decided to expand a little on my response to it. One of the issues here, there's 2 things I want to respond to in this particular blog posting, but in the second paragraph, they're referring to my recommendations, and they say this letter is distressing for many reasons, chief among them the fact that his narrative descriptions of board process and interactions with our administrators are distorted, misrepresented, and in some cases wholly invented. So before I go into that, their description or their characterization of me, that is actually typical of how they've been reacting all year to issues that I bring up about issues in my community or ethnic minority students. It's not to address the issues that I'm bringing up, but it's to attack my character or attack my method or just attack me for even asking the question. But just to give you some context, in October, now again, remember this letter just came out about a week ago, but I want to go back to October 22nd, 2013. The Education Task Force met, and they had an agenda item number 2, professional development for local school board members. And they had representatives, as it says here on the agenda, of the Utah School Boards Association discuss professional development. And they met before the task force on that day. And when they met, the 3 people that gave a presentation was Peggy Jo Kennett. She's the president of the Utah Board Association, and with her was Christy Sweat, who is the 3rd person down on this particular slide, and then in the middle is Jody Sundberg. And Christy Sweat, who is the vice president, one of the vice presidents for the Utah School Boards Association, is also the president of the Salt Lake City school board. So, and I interact with her often in terms of, she presides at the meetings and conducts them. and they're always conducted and presided in a way contrary to what this letter is asserting that I'll bring up in a second, in a way to just short circuit or cut off anything that I have to say or propose or want to ask. It's just bizarre. So anyways, I've been on the school board for about a year, and we're back at this October meeting. These three have just given a presentation to the task force, and there's a couple of comments that I wanted to share in this blog posting that came as a result of their presentation. Then Senator Stevenson spoke next and asked them some questions and made some comments.
Next is Senator Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you for this presentation. I wanted to ask some questions and then make a couple of comments. I'd like to focus on number 2 again, advocacy. School boards should be advocates for public education. I find that a lot of elected school board members feel pressure to advocate for public education as opposed to advocating for their constituents, advocating for the children in their district, advocating for results and for better teachers. And when school board members do advocate for the things I just mentioned, they're often labeled as obstructionists. And I'll use a specific example that's currently before us, Michael Clara. He has been in Salt Lake District now for less than 1 year, and I believe has advocated for the schools in his precinct. He has advocated for the children in his neighborhoods, probably more than any person I've ever met in the time I've been associated with school boards across this state. And yet he is labeled as an obstructionist. When you talk about using data, Michael Clara uses more data than any school board member I've ever met to prove his point. And I would say that while he is labeled as an obstructionist by his superintendent and by others in Salt Lake District and maybe others in the School Boards Association, I would say that we need more Michael Claras, more people who are willing to advocate for his schools. You know, when he points out, well, I won't go into everything he has pointed out, but I think it's refreshing to have that kind of difference of opinion and to demand the data that needs to be available to the public. And that's my next comment is about the data. Which data are we going to use?
So, I put that on there, on this blog posting for this particular meeting. And again, just keep in mind that this happened in October. And here we are in December, where you have the superintendent of the school district, referring to me in this letter, saying that I'm making things up and that that I'm not being truthful. And anybody that knows me, would, and even if you don't know me, you can Google my name and find that I'm very thorough and I research issues and I'm not ignorant to what is going on. And so it's just bizarre that you have adults that are professionals in the public education system that really think that name calling and mischaracterization of an elected official is going to serve to mask and hide what is actually going on. And it's what's concerning to me that here we are in the month of December. I was sworn into office as an elected member of the school board in January, and I thought that in these last 12 months that they had learned that those kind of tactics aren't going to work, that we need to just address the problem, and them attacking me as they always do whenever I bring up an issue, they really think that's going to work. And as some observers had pointed out to me, they've done this to other people, and other people go away and they recoil, from asking or trying to make improvements or trying to address issues in the district, and these type of tactics work, and they don't work on me. I'm immune to them. I'm not looking for their validation. And, as you hear Senator Stevenson describe, what he's observed of me, I just met him this year. And so this is coming, literally from a third party, I could argue, that he's observed this in our relationship. Actually, that's not accurate that I met him this year. I actually have probably met him about 3 or 4 years ago or 5 years ago when I was on CMAC, but, probably only interacted with him probably 2 or 3 times. And then we've actually, have discussed educational issues this year on a very consistent basis when this session started. The next person I want to share some of his comments with is in the same meeting. It was following the presentation by the School Board Association, and this is Senator Reed.
I'm not sure it's anybody's role to try to establish conformity. And as to the relationship of the superintendent and the board, from my perspective, the primary function in our form of government is for the board to provide oversight, or the legislature, in the case of the relationship between the governor and the legislature, is to provide oversight of the administration, first and foremost, above all other considerations, because the administration it executes policies, procedures, administrations that may or may not be fair to all those who are the recipients of that execution. And somebody has to represent in the system those who may be harmed by that execution, and have to remind the administration, and sometimes in no uncertain terms, that this is not right, it's not fair, and people are being harmed. So again, you do what you think you ought to do. It's your association, and in that sense it's private, and people can join it, participate in it or not. But I would just caution you to not establish a culture where the person who does speak out, who does disagree, who wants to fight for people he or she thinks are underrepresented within the system, that somehow they're ostracized or belittled because they're doing what they feel is very important. And sometimes they think they have to speak louder because they're not being heard. Now, I'll just end with this. I was a city council member on the west side, represented the Rose Park area. And I can tell you, and this is why I encourage Michael to speak up, and I'll do it again. I can tell you during my time of service, and up until my time of service, the west side did not receive all the advantages of the rest of the city. And I spoke loudly about that. And things began to change. Some of it was that people just didn't know, just didn't realize. I remember people talking about it, said, I've never been, other than going to the airport, I've never crossed the railroad tracks. I remember talking with very large developers in Utah who own property, major properties on the west side, and they'd never even been to it because they didn't want to go into that part of town. And so sometimes it's just pure ignorance, and other times it's discrimination. It's them. You don't want to have to deal with them. So I applaud Michael he's fighting an uphill battle, and he's trying to represent people that are underrepresented. And I'd say that about anybody that's doing what he's doing under the conditions he's doing it. Now, that's not to say in some way that the board, they're not representing their constituents as well and trying to do what they think is best and right. But I think it's unfortunate if he's labeled because he's speaking up and speaking up loudly. I think that should be encouraged. And then there will be a meeting of the minds. The right ideas, the most profound approaches will, in the end of the day, win the day. In almost every case, that happens. And if it doesn't happen immediately, it does over time. So that would be my only caution to you. Again, do what you want to do, but let's not label people or somehow call them obstructionist and try to get them to conform to a system that I'm not sure who can define that, frankly, what the system is. It means something in Ogden, something in Salt Lake, something in Provo. It has a different meaning depending on the group who are in the majority at the time. Thank you, Mr. President.
So the next slide on this PowerPoint, and I appreciate the wisdom and the words of Senator Reid and Senator Stevenson. What's ironic is keep in mind that what you just heard is happened in October, and they were responding to the presentation that the Utah School Board Association leadership had just given them. And then the next slide you'll hear Christy Sweat, who is the vice president again for USBA, and she's also the president of the school board in Salt Lake City, where I'm serving. She will protest and say, no, we don't refer to Michael Clara or call him that, but it's okay 2 months later to say that I'm uncivilized and call me a liar, I suppose, is part of what her logic is. So let's listen into her response in part to what their comments were.
Please. Thank you, Senator Stevenson. I appreciate your comments. Being from Salt Lake District, the one thing there's a couple of things that I would just like to share, and that is that, our board has never labeled Mr. Clara as an obstructionist, and I don't believe I've ever heard our superintendent call him that. He has a difference of opinion, which he's been given ample opportunity to share in our board meetings. It's a public meeting, and all of us try our hardest, to allow each of us, to share our opinions and ask for information. The 11 years that I've sat on that board, I will tell you that, and it saddens me a little bit to hear you say that you've never heard anybody advocate for the children of the Glendale area, because I spend a lot of time doing that. The Glendale area, where Mr. Clara is from, receives more resources from our budget, than most other schools in our district. And so I would invite you. I would love for you to come to our district and come to our schools, and I would love to sit down and talk to you more about it. I think that it's important that this committee know that that's one board member and is not reflective of all the other 6 board members that sits in Salt Lake District. So I appreciate your comments. I think that given the opportunity that you would see that Salt Lake District does pay attention to the community that Mr. Clara is from, and that the conversations that are handled at our board level center around those highly impacted schools, that we have quite a number of, in Salt Lake City School District.
Okay, then just President Niederhauser, just
Yes.
a few other comments if I could. Representative Draxler talked.
So this bubble that you see here is my editorial comment, is just the irony that she'll, in this October meeting, say, we don't call him an obstructionist, but again, 2 months later, it's okay to do this character attacks. But that's not like it's a new thing. They've been doing that all year with me each time I bring something up. The other tactic that they like to use is this isolation tactic, is to say, you know what, Michael's the only one saying that. Nobody else is like she claims that the other 6 board members that I'm the only one, the odd man out in this situation. So again, this letter is just odd in that regard. And I want to point out that, some of the issues that I bring up are not unique to me. This is a picture of me and Kyle Lamalfa, who is serves on the city council. He's my city council representative and is also serving as the chair of the city council. And this was an article that was back, as you can see here, back on April 2nd, 2012. I was not on the school board at the time. This picture, I think, was taken this summer at the opening of the Community Learning Center here between Mountain View and Glendale. But at the time of the article, Kyle Amalfa was pushing for, and as you can see, the title says, "Will new Salt Lake City School District boundaries boost West Side focus?" And Kyle felt that there was a lack of representation on the West Side for the schools. And here's a quote from the article. It says, "The vision steered by new District 2 City Councilman Kyle Amalfa is to expand West End representation and to diversify the school board. He also hopes the move will give voice to the area's wide swath of ethnically diverse students." And he's right on. There's a lack of representation on the West Side in terms of number. I'm on the school board, and my voice constantly gets drowned out in any issues that I have brought up or that I feel that need to get addressed or that people in the community need to get addressed, just don't get addressed. And so then this is why I have to, if you will, expand, my ability to be able to seek solutions. I have to look for solutions outside of the confines of the school board then. And then they get upset when I do that. And so that's what's kind of bizarre about the letter. But before I go back to the letter, let me point out here, this is a picture of me and Alama Uluave. He is my predecessor. And he and I, this article here was from October 2012 when I was running during the campaign season. And he and I ran against each other in 2004, and I lost by 1 vote. He served 2 terms, and then in November 2012, I won the election. But in this particular article, before the election happened, a couple weeks before the election, this article came out. It says, "Salt Lake City School District rivals from 2004 in another showdown." This is what the quote was of Alama Uluave in the article. He says here, Uluave said he's concerned about a lack of collaboration within the district. He said the district is reluctant to share negative information with the community. He also says that transparency is skewed. "They let us know just enough to keep everything hunky-dory," said Uluave. "When 60% of Hispanic students fail to graduate, I'm up in arms." And I can fully endorse and bear witness to what he said. His 8 years of experience on the board, this is what his assessment is, and I can testify to that in the 12 months that I've served on the board. Yet you see from the letter that they send the speaker, that these 4 send the Speaker of the House, I'm the problem, and I'm the one that's making things up. But I have these 3 arrows here just to point out, and I want to just share at the remainder of this PowerPoint presentation is just going to be snippets of various board meetings throughout the year. Some of them will be videos and some of them will be audios, just to demonstrate I'm not making this up. And what's really bizarre is that these 4 know that they're playing a game here, and unfortunately it's on the future of our community and the future of our students and the future of our children, is because these people, these 4 are at the leadership and control, public education in Salt Lake City. And that's why we do have over half of our Hispanic students are dropping out, because when you have somebody like me who is the elected representative and they just constantly want to attack my character and misdirect, anything that I bring up. And in this particular case, they go on a public relations counteroffensive because I submitted 7 recommendations to the Education Task Force up at the legislature. And the 3 points here that I point out is that they actually are telling the speaker, go look at our meetings. Here's the link. Go look at the meetings. And they says, we expect competing priorities and policy disagreements among members of our board. Indeed, we believe that diverse opinions are necessary to the healthy function of any governing board or legislative body. We have always been ready, willing, and able to engage in constructive deliberation with Mr. Clara on issues over which the board has jurisdiction. And then towards the end, they say, in the last paragraph, if you should have further correspondence with Mr. Clara, please encourage him to bring the energy he currently devotes to letter writing and filing complaints to discussions at our board table. We believe that his perspective, if it can be conveyed through civil discourse, could make a valuable contribution to our board decision making. The part that they're leaving out is that any complaint or letter writing that I've done has its genesis in the school board meeting. That, in other words, I have brought up issues in the school board meeting and that say it's not on the agenda, we're not discussing it, and then if I ask to put it on the agenda, they just won't do it because it's not part of their priorities. And so I'll go file a complaint with another agency or take it up with the legislature or somebody else, and they complain. So you see, it's really bizarre. On the one hand, they claim that they're open, but even by their own letter, they demonstrate that if I do say anything or have any type of proposals or recommendations, then their response is to attack. And that's all they do. So listen into, I had to cut this down and take out half of the examples I put in here just to keep this short because this is already way too long. But listen into the rest of this PowerPoint presentation will just be the board meetings. And on the right-hand corner, it'll give you the date. On the left-hand corner in red, it'll tell you what the tactic is that they pull. And this is constant. I would say with probably the exception of 1 or 2 board meetings this year, there was always some type of diversional tactic or some type of tactic to just not address, the issues that I'm bringing up. In these West Side schools.
This is comparing apples and oranges. You cannot take teachers in a school of primarily children who don't speak English at home, where English may not be their native language, and compare them to a school in another part of the school district where practically all the children were raised speaking English.
I didn't think we were comparing. I thought we were comparing student growth.
So,
I don't think we were comparing. I wasn't comparing students to students. I was comparing the teacher's effectiveness rating was happening based on student growth.
Right. Well, you can either not entirely.
So much for being with us on 2 News at 10. Angry teachers from the Salt Lake City School District went to the school board offices and demanded an apology.
Now, their beef was with one particular school board member who recently said that too many teachers in Salt Lake's West Side were, quote, ineffective.
Christina Flores with more on this story for us tonight. Why did he call them ineffective, Christina?
Well, he used that word in a recent interview with the Salt Lake Tribune, but Michael Clara says he didn't randomly use that word. He used it because it was in an official report that was presented recently to the school board. Now, he says he didn't mean to offend any teachers, but the teachers were offended.
How dare anyone say we are ineffective, especially until they have taken a walk in our shoes.
Teachers from the Salt Lake City School District say they were offended by comments from new school board member Michael Clara.
This behavior is a backstabbing to the very communities that endorsed Mr. Clara. He has betrayed the trust given to him by all who supported him in his election.
Clara recently filed a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights, concerned about the high turnover rate of teachers in Salt Lake's West Side schools. And he said test scores showed there were too many ineffective teachers in those schools.
I want you to know that these teachers in Utah do more with less than any other group of individuals in this country. And they deserve our praise, and they deserve our respect.
Susan McFarland, the teachers union president, says teachers shouldn't be judged by scores from one student test. And if Westside teachers have left their jobs, it's because there is no job security in short contracts.
Those new teachers have one-year contracts, so they're terminated at the end of each year.
I can guarantee that we all work our tails off every day, all day, to give our students our best and to help them be successful.
I don't understand how this got twisted around.
Clara, a longtime advocate for schools on the West Side, said he didn't mean to offend.
My whole purpose is addressing the high turnover rate that teachers are facing on the West Side. And then this got turned into other things.
Now, Michael Clara says that his goal has always been to support teachers and students alike. Now, the teachers tonight said they wanted an apology. Clara did not apologize. He only explained his position, but the school board president urged everyone from here on out to work together. Mark and Shauna, back to you.
Heated meeting. All right, Christina, thanks.
Let me ask this then. On our policy, on our B2 policy, it says recording and minutes for board meetings. It says written minutes and recordings will include, it says the date, the names of the members, substance of the actions taken, which is what we agreed that we would put in, names of all citizens who appeared, and it says that any other information that any member requests be entered into the recording of the minutes. And this policy comes directly from the Open Meetings Act. And so, I don't know what the practice was in the past, but, I'm here, I'm reading the law and the policy, and it says any other information that any member requests be entered into the recording.
I am enough opposed to this that I would suggest that we ask our legal counsel to meet with us. This is an order. If we are, once again, being accused of breaking law by the way we're doing things, we should get the board lawyer here, and we will get a legal opinion about this. Because I don't think, we can talk about this all night, but if you say we're breaking the law by not doing this, I really do not feel that board members should be just bringing stuff in and saying, add this to the minutes.
That's the law.
It's great.
Regardless of
I'm
that's
asking
the
that
law.
we get a lawyer here, and then we duke it out with our lawyer and decide whether we are going to let individual board members just bring stuff in and say, add it to the minutes. Because it's not the way it's been done, and I think it's contrary to what the minutes are. It's not.
I'm just reading the law.
I know. That's why I'm asking for a lawyer.
Tell me where you're reading from.
Well, on our policy, and it's also on our policy, even if it wasn't
I
the
would
law.
move that we suspend, do not, if we are going to not accept the minutes, that's fine.
I would move that we let the president run the meeting, Doug.
I would
Can the president run the meeting?
that we have a discussion with our board lawyer about this topic.
And before that, Christy, you had a question for me. I'd like the opportunity to answer.
Yes, would you please? Yes, so, all right, so we've got a motion.
Because the motion is to suspend debate and not to continue discussing this topic until we have our lawyer here.
So can I just get a clarification from where you're reading so we can pass that on to John? That would be helpful, and then we will have a vote.
So this is.
I did ask for the clarification.
There's two places that, one is Board School Meetings Administrative Procedure B2, number 5, and A, in the last bullet point reads, any other information that any member requests be entered into the record in minutes. And then it's also in the Open Meetings Act under Utah Code 52-4-203, and it says almost the same thing. Any other information that is a record of the meeting proceedings that any member requests be entered into the minutes.
Okay, thank you. Did you get that one? Thank you very much. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further?
I move that we suspend discussion of the topic of individual board members being allowed to enter whatever they like into our minutes until we ask John Robson to advise us on the law in this matter.
Go to January 22nd agenda.
Sure.
So I have a question about that because I went back and looked, when I brought up this point of order, the following meeting, you brought up, go up, I'm sorry. And you see right there where it says point of order clarification. How on earth is that added to the agenda after the meeting was done?
No, it wasn't.
I have the original, if you go, I have the original agenda right here where it says welcome, pledge of allegiance. That was not on there. And then if you go to the email that I got from
like I got an email on January 22nd from Allison, and it says, here's the agenda, and if you go click on the state webpage where we have the official agenda, that's not on there. And that ended up being put on there in a subsequent, the first time I noticed it, because I went back and what brought my attention to it is I was wondering how the next meeting when you passed out your response to my letter, this was not on the agenda, but then all of a sudden your thing actually has an agenda item to it, and when I go back and look, and sure enough, the agenda was actually changed
Michael,
way after the meeting.
we don't change the agenda. So I'm not sure what happened, but basically what you're saying is that Allison, once she got the agenda, she would have changed it because
I don't know if
she's
she
the
changed it.
one who makes this available out on the website.
Can you go to the state webpage? right now?
May I please make one point? We have a motion on the floor
True.
to accept the previous subject. We need to deal with that. You're getting off subject.
Oh, no,
I'd
I'm
like
not.
no, you are. And I want to stay on subject because I'd like to go home.
Okay.
soon.
Hold on a second. Can I have a point of order, though? I don't agree that what she just said. This has everything to do with it.
Okay,
It's not about you. Call for the question.
That's correct.
All right, then I need to see more details to that because it doesn't make it, even this explanation falls short for me because, you know, we're being told that failure to fully fund growth and in order to require not to cut this program, and you're quoting a $220,000 cut in this program, which I'm not seeing that cut at all. And then, you know, when I look at even our own budget, when you look at the revenue side of our budget, it looks like we have over $500,000 increase in state money from last year to this year. So, and we had a drop according to this part of our budget. We had a 230 student drop in students. So we wouldn't expect any growth anyways because we had quite the opposite. But so I'm just not seeing that if we dropped in 230 students, but we got an increase of state money this year, I don't understand then how state programs are in jeopardy. You know, one of my concerns about this is, you know, when I looked at the, and I meant to ask if we could all get copies of this, but I don't remember who sent this to me, but when you look at the technical review from the last one, it seemed to me there was a lot of stuff missing that the evaluators were saying that the district didn't put in there. You know, stuff like, you know, goals were not in there, that there was a lot of evidence was not in there. And I'm just, are those things, I mean, are we aware of that, or are the people who are doing this grant, are they aware that what was missing?
In terms of the points, the data that was missing was community data, not district data.
That's not accurate.
That's absolutely accurate, and it was analyzed externally, and there was an actual summary of that that got printed by the University of Utah in the Economic and Business Review.
Well, can you send us a copy, send everybody a copy of this, the Race to the Top technical review form? There was 3 evaluators, and it looks to me that a lot of district data was missing.
What were you
So you're
talking about?
talking about the proposal a year ago that was evaluated, and the district received feedback on a year ago. I don't know how that's relevant to this discussion, but be happy to send it to you.
Well, it's relevant if we make the same mistakes again and we don't get awarded.
Well, I think that, you know, yeah, I think that what I would say is, from what I've been hearing, is they use what was, you know, the feedback that they got from the last one. Obviously, they'll be putting it into this one. The Race to the Top is always really difficult. You know, I mean, there's no Utah schools that have ever received it, but I think we're getting better at it. So what I would say is that, yes, they're using that information.
But that's not what he just said. That's what concerns me.
No, I heard him say that.
Okay, I thought I heard him say what had nothing to do with district data, it was community data that was missing.
Well, from the last
On the points,
one.
on the points from the last
Right, on the points from the last one. But that information absolutely would be used.
But before we have this discussion, if we need to have the discussion, let's have it. But let's make sure that everybody has the same
Right,
information.
that's what I asked. If you can send that to the board then, and we can look
But
at
I
it.
want you to just think about the kinds of questions you're asking. So let's wait until, I mean, if you really want to have this discussion, if it's important to you to rehash something a year ago, that we actually got to the final round. It's not like we were thrown out. We can certainly have that discussion, either in a small group by the superintendent, or the whole board can have it. But it seems to me that it might be better to move forward with this grant rather than us worrying about feedback that's already been delivered. If you have a specific question about what data is missing, let's make an appointment, sit down with the superintendent, we'll talk about it.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
Because I'm just hearing different things, and it concerns me if we're going to repeat the same mistakes, then we won't be awarded the grant again.
Did you hear, though, that I explained that it's graded differently, so your comparison with last year is irrelevant?
I don't think it's irrelevant. That's why probably we need to talk. If you think it's irrelevant.
All right, then that would be good to, let's arrange that. And let's get somebody in the room, Michael, who actually knows a lot about the grant process, the writing of it, the way.
Yeah, I'm just reading the review. I don't know.
Right, you're just reading the review, and you may or may not be making the intelligent
As a
conclusion.
policymaker, that's why I'm asking the question.
Okay.
This is a repeating pattern, though, that we should decide as a board how to handle. When a member has this document in front of them that no one else has, and throws out an unexpected question, it might be good, instead of what just happened, to say, that's a great question, we'll get a copy of that document, because it is a little silly talking about a document that's in front of you that no one else has seen, and it's happened before. That does take up time. So at some point we should we should have a procedure for when someone has a document, no one else is and is discussing information that none of us have. At some point we have to have a pat answer that, oh, well, that's a good question. We'll distribute that document, or if it's a single-page document, you could run in the back and make photocopies. But this is a continuing problem for the board.
But I do think it should be relevant to what is required. And so if there is something, and I agree with you, sir, we need to all have the same information. If it's relevant to what we're talking about, then that's true. Okay.
Yes, Tiffany, I have a suggestion really quickly.
Yes.
If there are documents that someone wants to discuss, I don't see why that person, that board member, or whomever, can't come early to the meeting and get copies of the rest of us.
Right.
Or distribute it through an email to the rest of us, so we have time to review it before the meeting. And I think that would just be a nice courtesy.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Otherwise, it's hard to know how we could actually answer the question or discuss it if none of us are privy to the information. I just would like us to have some procedure for when this happens over and over.
Our team will give it its best effort. To be finalist last year was
pretty
unique
unique and unexpected.
It opened additional doors for us. It brought funding to the district. We hope to be awarded the grant. The next item is just a heads up.
So you see the game that they play here is that it doesn't matter, you saw a few meetings before this that when I brought information and did pass it out and wanted it to be part of the minutes, they fought that and said, no, you're not just going to bring stuff and pass it out and give it to us. Now, several months later, they're complaining that I didn't bring the information and there are copies for everybody. And then after this meeting, I find out we all had this information. And then subsequent to that meeting, so they have the information, I brought it and referred to it. So they're upset about that, but it's all designed to not address the original question about my concern about, that we botched it, I believe, in the way we submitted the application last year for Race to the Top. And I wanted to discuss those issues, but they don't want to. And we never did discuss them. And he did send the link out to everybody again and send hard copies to those of us that get hard copies, and we got it. So I got 2 hard copies from the district on that, but you saw how they it doesn't matter what I do. If I bring the information, they don't want it in their meeting, and then you notice that it's their meeting because I'm not, even though I'm elected and a member of the board, they disqualify me from being equal to them. This last presentation is out of order. It goes back to the August meeting when we were voting on raising taxes, and I was explaining why I was opposed to raising taxes, and you'll see the superintendent interrupts me, then they do the call for the question trick and that kind of stuff. So this is not anywhere near what the board president has described to the Speaker of the House, saying that we're open to, listening to what Mr. Clara has to say. Nothing could be further from the truth.
Seconded by Rosemary. But thank you for your I didn't hear that either. Any other comments?
Yeah, I have a comment. I have a letter too that I wanted to pass out to the board and just say that, I'm opposed to the tax increase for the same reasons that I had expressed when we did the budget. And basically the letter, and I'd like it to be part of our record here for this meeting, is just a letter that I had written to my neighbors that had contacted me opposed to the tax increase. And the ones that I put in here, the two that I mentioned in here is one, for example, that Janet brought up when you showed this slide earlier, Janet, and you talked about enhancements for accelerated students. And I have the documentation in here. Again, I don't see, you say that we're short $255,000, and I don't see that from the state at all. And even since we've had the discussion, I've confirmed that there was not a decrease from the state in that funding. And that's just one example, but there were multiple examples that I saw through the process that I don't see the justification for raising the taxes of my neighbors. And then the other one I mentioned is just that I'm opposed also to just the wide discrepancy that we have that through the board action, we give the superintendent, he'll get a 6% increase this year, and we only gave a 1% increase to our employees. And I just feel that that's
Michael, that is not true. You asked for documentation.
Right.
Of a 10-year history of my salary. It's not
right.
true.
No, I don't know it's not true. What I'm telling you is what the truth is. You don't know what's in my mind, do you?
Okay.
No, we're not going to stop, because if he's going to tell me, try to call me a liar in this meeting, he can't justify that at all. So let's talk about it. You have a Laurel, do you mind? So you're going to let him call me a liar and then I can't respond to it? He did. Okay, well, let's talk about, let me tell you where I get the 6%. The 6%, excuse me, Laurel, I have the floor. Do you mind? I do have the floor. I was talking, but I'm talking. And so what I was saying is that the 6%, he says, okay, so we're not going to talk about it. Okay, that's fine. But this is the way the board functions, and we're not transparent when he says it's not true. Well, can I explain why there's a 6%?
All right, so I appreciate, thank you.
You don't want me to explain why there's a 6%?
Thank you very much for your
Okay,
letter.
then that's not transparency.
You have to call for the question.
So
that's part of Robert's rules.
So
and so now we go ahead. So let's call for the question. There's a motion on the floor. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Thank you. All right.
And can I say too, I'm opposed to the process that we're not able to discuss this. And we rob the public then of deliberations when we do things like this. It's embarrassing.
Thank you, Senator Stevenson. Thank you, Senator Stevenson. I appreciate your comments. Being from Salt Lake District, the one thing there's a couple of things that I would just like to share. And that is that, our board has never labeled Mr. Clara as an obstructionist. And I don't believe I've ever heard our superintendent call him that. He has a difference of opinion, which he's been given ample opportunity to share in our board meetings. It's a public meeting, and all of us try our hardest, to allow each of us, to share our opinions and ask for information.